Hey, I'm Jana, the little sister.
And I'm Jeff, her big brother. Welcome to Sibling Rivalry, a podcast about our favorite sport, baseball.
This week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, we address the elephant in the room.
Well, first off, I'm going to ask him his name. And now a quick look at the SRBB headlines.
MLB and the Players Union agree to 7-inning doubleheaders. Both games will be shortened, and the 8th inning will begin with the runner on second.
Congratulations to Mike and Jessica Trout on the birth of their baby Bat, Beckham Aaron Trout.
John McNamara, former manager of the A's, Padres, Reds, Angels, and Red Sox, passed away at the age of 88. He was 1 out away from a World Series title with the 1986 Red Sox.
And the answer is yes, you can opt back in. Nick Markakis of the Braves has decided to return to the team and play the 2020 season. You can find these and past week's headlines on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com. Remember to rate and subscribe wherever you listen, and tell a friend to listen to the Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast. So last week, we talked about opening weekend. This week, we'll look at the full first week of the season. We're about a sixth of the way through. And think about that, in just when we get to 15 games, we're a quarter of the way through the season. Now, not everybody is going to get to 15 games around the same time, because some teams have been able to play and they've got 10 games under their belts, or 8 or 9, but they're all kind of that because not everybody got a day off yet. Not everybody could be like the Astros, who are already having 2 days off in the season because they're the teacher's pet, the commissioner's pet, who goes and Manfreds everything up. But what we found in this first week, of all the things we wanted to talk about the return of baseball, the last thing we wanted to talk about was when a positive is not a positive. And that brings up the Miami Marlins.
Miami Marlins, 18 players and 2 staff members have tested positive for COVID, which caused a domino effect because they were supposed to play the Phillies. And they did play because they had 3 players test positive on the Sunday game, or before that Sunday game.
Well, there was 4, and we mentioned that last week, how that was
That's
that
right.
4, and then boom.
Yeah, it exploded. But they played, and then that affected the Phillies because then they were on the field with the Marlins. And so then you have 2 teams, and you think, well, it's just the Phillies and the Marlins, but then no, it's that domino effect because the Phillies were supposed to play
The Yankees.
And the Marlins
were supposed to go home.
Yes, and
play the Orioles.
And open with the Orioles. And everything just exploded. And when I first heard about the Marlins, I was thinking back to comments I had heard that Don Mattingly made that we're having a problem with social distancing. Things are a work in progress. And that made me think, this seems to be a team problem, not an MLB problem.
What is it that say in when the NCAA comes down on a college and they sanction them, they say there was lack of institutional control. And that's what this is. The Marlins, Don Mattingly, Derek Jeter, all these guys. And I know they're young guys. They're used to being in Miami, I guess. And so they're a party scene. They all go out to a club, or many do. It wasn't just 1 or 2 of them. There were quite a few that went, and they come back, and now half of the roster is out. They're all on the COVID list.
Yeah. And the Marlins have had to scramble and sign deals with, different players, minor league contracts to even field a team. So I guess in that regard, for those players, it's good, but they still have to play for the Marlins. So
well, that's a lot of, and that's a problem too, because you already know that these guys don't seem to care, and you don't know if this makes any difference to them.
right. Are they going to, after this episode, and they all, they're quarantined, the guys that have it, from what I understand, they were sent back to Miami and they're quarantining at home. The rest of the team is still in Philadelphia, as far as I know, or as I've heard. But is their attitude going to change? Because they've messed things up for baseball. But now we also have the Cardinals that you throw into the mix. Now, the Cardinals have 4 confirmed cases. There's 3 players and 1 staff member. There's also 4 inconclusive tests. So there was some kind of anomaly with the test. And some of them are what they call the rapid test, where I think it's saliva, but the saliva is supposed to be like the best way to test. And I think those tests, they're not sure. So as of right now, the Cardinals are okay if it's just the 4 confirmed. If you add 4 more, then you run into the issue. But there are rumors, they haven't come out with the official report yet, that there was a visit to a casino. So that too could be, as you said, the lack of the coaching staff, the ownership saying, listen, these are things you have to do in order to play. And that means you don't go out. So whether that's true or not, it's obviously a lack of not being aware of the situation, not taking precautions.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I've heard it more than once. We can't control what they do when they're away, at home anyway. When they're on the road, I think it's a lot easier for them to control the team, to work it out. I've heard different coaches saying, hey, we're trying to get like a meeting room so the guys can come together. We can talk about the game afterwards, or they can socialize a little bit so it doesn't feel like they're just locked in their room. I know that you mentioned seeing, I think, the Dodgers coming off of the team playing, and everybody's got their gaming systems and things like that. So that way, once they're in the room, there's no reason. And, if you've ever played video games, you get into whatever game you like, you could sit there for hours and not realize you just passed 8 hours playing a game.
That's true.
Because you get too involved. Whatever it's going to do to keep them in a room, to mandate that while you're on the road, you have to have room service. You can't go anywhere. Or if they say you can go someplace, it has to be in a certain, they can't even use the gym in the hotel. So when these other players, and like anything, there's a percentage. We can't think that these players don't have the same thought process that normal citizens do. There's a percentage of the country who believes that this is serious and we have to do all the things that are being told. And there's the group who think it's a hoax. And there's the people in the middle who aren't sure where to go. But there's players that are going to think. There's Joe West, the umpire. He thinks it's all a hoax. He's out there working, doesn't care, not wearing a mask. That's on him.
Maybe that's why he got hit in the head with a bat.
I hope as shit the other day. Yeah.
It was a wake-up call. Hey, this is real.
It didn't look like he woke up. Just looked like he was bleeding. But you see, you have those guys. So these guys, they don't have to believe in it, and they may not. It may not even be like the political division we're seeing over this in the country. It could just be, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm invincible. This isn't going to get me. And without thinking, that's the one thing that people have been saying about this is, it's not about whether you'll survive it. It's about who you may give it to will survive it. And if they just don't think they're going to get it or they'll get through it, they're not thinking about who it is that they could pass it on to.
Yeah, in the majority of cases right now, from stats from different states, are in that 20 to 39 age range, which fits right in there with Major League ball players.
That's the bulk of the, yeah, I think
It.
I was looking up earlier about average age, and the league average is about 29 years old.
Yep, it's right
So
in there.
that fits in there. I think the bigger thing, if I'm a player and I'm not worried about whether I get it or not, these guys whoever brought it into the clubhouse, which would be the full Marlins team or the few players from the Cardinals, look at the overall effect. How many games were lost? And the Nationals as a team voted to not go. The Nationals not playing a game in 8 days.
Yeah.
From there, they were supposed to go down to Miami. They chose not to go. And the league didn't say, well, you're forfeiting those 4 games. They're like, we're with you.
Yeah. I think it's like 17 games or more that have been, I don't say lost, but they've been postponed. I'm not sure when those are going to be made up, but it's a lot. So it's, that domino effect, and the Marlins started it all. And the good news is that the Phillies have not had any players test positive. That's good, because on the field, that would be a concern.
I think we'd probably see a bigger push to cancel the season if it had shown that players from one team potentially infected the other team. This shows what I think we've known, is that you're outside in the game. There's social distancing to the point that that's just how the game is set up. And there's not a lot of interaction. I have seen more and more teams wearing masks on the field. Saw a lot of players get to first base, throw a mask on. The first baseman will put theirs on or pull their mask up or whatever. So people are looking at it, even if they don't believe in it. A lot of these players are like, hey, I don't want to be the guy who does get something, passes it along, and shuts down the league. Because to me, that's a bigger thing. Yeah,
you'll always be that guy.
It's one thing if I get it, take it home, and give it to my family. Not that that's good, but it's different than if I go down and I'm the cause or one of the causes that shuts down a league and everybody's livelihood. There's still a lot of people, while there's still a lot of people involved in all this that aren't on the field there, all the concessions people, all those things in the stadium operations people, there are still a lot of people that are working now that weren't before, because there is a season.
Yeah, and after the Marlins came out with their positive test, the Dodgers, Dave Roberts talked to Justin Turner. Justin Turner is like the team captain, and the Dodgers came out with all players will wear face coverings in the dugout. Saw that in the games, in the most recent games. Did not see that before, so that's good. Any player not in the lineup will not be in the dugout during the game, so they're in the stands. And these are actually things they were supposed to be doing anyway, and they weren't doing it. And now it's like, oh, okay, hold on, we better do these things. The other thing they put in was pitching coaches will not be in the dugout when the team is hitting, and the hitting coaches will not be in the dugout when the team is on the field. And then no high fives, no handshakes.
That they've been doing, and I noticed that there was less of the contact as the weekend went along because everybody got it. We don't want, the West has been the only division so far for both the AL and NL that has not been affected by this. The East was affected the most because everybody that was playing the Marlins or the Phillies. In fact, one of the things that was kind of good to see was that while the Yankees were supposed to be in Philadelphia and the Marlins were supposed to be at home with the Orioles and the Nationals, that they actually said, we're just going to put it together and let the Yankees and the Orioles play. Let's get their series out of the way. They've got to constantly, what's the term? I hate the term, but situation is fluid. You have to just adapt with what's happening and get the games in. And that's going to be a big problem. We know that they're not going to be able to make up. Really, for the Marlins, they're almost going to have to play double headers the rest of the way.
And the other thing that really got me, though, is when you look at Twitter or you watch MLB Network and you have guys like John Heyman who are like, okay, that's it. The season's over. And it's like, do you even like baseball? Do you even want baseball to continue? And then also the naysayers about the bubble, how, oh, the bubble won't work. That would never work in Major League Baseball. But I think it could work. We've talked about it. If you have 3 divisions, then you have 3 bubbles. And within the 3 bubbles, you have 2 locations.
Right.
So that it could
really
work.
Manage it a lot better. Everybody, I mean, look at it. So far, the NBA, the NHL have both started up. And as far as I know, I haven't heard anything recently, but there's nobody testing positive in the bubble. And they're really hardcore on the rules about everything, that if you leave before you come back, you have to quarantine. Baseball, the idea was good. Let's let everybody play at their home parks. In theory, it could all work well. In reality, you can't control the players if they want to go do something. And that's the problem. When they're at home, that's when it's going to be the issue. Because when they're on the road, the players can police each other and say, where are you going? Get back in your room. Or, we can only go here or here. And if we're not going here right now, go to your room.
They need a hall monitor at the hotel.
Exactly. Well, you know what? The players, it's like when you're in the military, you have to stand guard or whatever. Every once in a while, that's your post. Every 2 hours or every 3 hours, you go sit somewhere and you watch the hall. You're the hall monitor. You can be Bobby Brady, school police or whatever it was he was. Right.
I was a junior MP when we lived at Fort Campbell. So it would be like that. And we had our own little
knew there was something about you that I didn't really like, being an MP, huh? All right, copper.
Junior. Just junior. But yeah, they could have their armband or their sash, like a beauty contest.
Sash. Yeah, that's good. They could do that. But or they could wear like the ropes, you used to see like the ROTC guys always had the different colored ropes on their uniforms. I don't ever know what any of that meant, but they could do like that. I'm the hall monitor. And then like for the Dodgers, you could send the hall monitor out, send like Kike out there in uniform, because he kind of has that cop mustache going on.
He does.
And then Justin Turner could come out, because he's more like the supervisor or the commanding officer, and he could come out with some kind of scrambled eggs on his hat. And
well, they should have somebody in the hallway, but then they should also have somebody in the lobby, because people are sneaky. It's like, high school overnight trips where you're climbing out the window.
I didn't get to have one of those because the year before me ruined it for the rest of us.
Of course.
Now, if this was Survivor Baseball that we talked about way back in like episode 5, in different ways to run the baseball or get baseball back, the Marlins and I think the Cardinals now too would have both been voted off the island.
Yes, they would have been gone. And actually, I mean, it sounds extreme, but it frees up the schedule where we don't have teams like the Nationals just in holding pattern for 8 days. And the other thing, too, is they not only get voted off the island, but they should get fined because they were blatantly going against the rules.
Yeah. No, I think there needs to be. I read somewhere somebody did that's like, hey, if you get to this point and you test positive and cause this, you should be suspended for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it totally makes sense to me. I mean, we have had guys Just recently, I think it was Joey Votto, who said, I'm not feeling well, self-reported. Now, I haven't
Mike Moustakas, another Red, he did the same thing like a couple of days in.
They're being smart and being adult and mature, because there are guys on the team. One guy on the Phillies, Didi Gregorius, he has some issues with his kidneys. So, if he were to get this, it could be bad for him, because if you have kidney disease, I'm not saying he does, but he has some kind of issue with his kidneys. So he has a medical problem. We also know there are other guys that have issues too. And so that's the other thing too, is if you're a team, you should be looking out for one another. And I really fault, the Marlins too. Obviously they were not following protocols. And on the Sunday game that they were going to play with the Phillies, their starting pitcher tested positive for coronavirus, right, and they still played. Now, he didn't play, but they said, we're still going to play via text message. That's how they decided.
Did somebody post that they think that the Marlins should play all the rest of their games via Zoom?
Yes.
This season?
Yes. They should. There's been other issues too, where you have one isolated case with Juan Soto of the Nationals, who tested positive, was asymptomatic, but then they thought it was a false positive, and then his other tests after were negative. But he was finally cleared by the team, by MLB, after taking, I don't know how many tests, it was like 10 tests, but still couldn't play because of the District of Columbia's quarantine rules.
Right, that's what held it up more than he was fine with the league. It was the city. See, that's the thing. We haven't put that into play. The Blue Jays aren't playing at home, and it's because the Canadian government shut that down. DC stopped Soto from coming back. Conceivably, we could see these cities. We could have seen, none of them are doing it that I'm aware of, but we could see Baltimore say, no, you guys can't, Marlins can't come here. Mm-hmm. Or the Cardinals can't come Chicago or wherever. Those are things that we haven't really taken that into account either. We just figured, everybody said, yeah, we want the game back. So what do you think, based on what's going on right now, what's your final thought on where baseball should go from here with this?
With baseball, I think we continue the season. We are seeing teams tighten up their ship, but players need to be held accountable. And teams need to be held accountable. So if that is a player being suspended or fined, both, then those kind of things need to happen. Because I think when there are no consequences and you just go on the COVID list, it's obviously, to the Marlins, it wasn't a big deal. Not when you have 18 players that got the virus. And obviously there was one or two or all of them brought it in the clubhouse, but there needs to be consequences. I don't want to see the season just, hang it up. Well, that was a good week of baseball, because this was the wake-up call that I think that all the teams needed to get their act together. It's sad that it took 20 people on one team to get COVID-19, but going forward, there needs to be more action from the MLB to say, okay, especially if it was egregious, like going to the hotel bar or the nightclub or casino or whatever it may be.
I agree that the games need to keep going. We've not seen that there's any transfer on the field. So far, we haven't seen that. And we had all those Marlins players. But I think that the fact that the 4 initially that were positive were pulled before they could play again. And I think that did show a lot of people, hey, could easily happen. But when the Phillies players didn't test positive, I think a lot of people said, nah, okay. They weren't worried about what was happening on the field. They may still be worried what happens off the field. The thing I think that really tightened everything down and got a lot of the players and the teams to say, wait, we really do need to take this more seriously, was when the Cardinals popped up. Because the Marlins, they're a major league organization, but when you hear that, and maybe it's just because they're in Miami, it's South Florida. Maybe it's just because Florida, you always think these are the crazy things out of Florida. But the Cardinals are a cornerstone organization within baseball. They've always been held in high regard, even if you hate them. There's just something about the St. Louis Cardinals. And when they had guys do that, I think that woke more people up because of where it came from. With the Cardinals going down, that got Lorenzo Cain from the Milwaukee Brewers, who didn't play because the Cardinals and the Brewers were supposed to play, to say, I'm not digging this. And he opted out, which is tough for the Brewers because he's one of their top players, especially, and we'll talk about Christian Yelich later, especially when you have players that, top players that are struggling. Lorenzo Cain was not. And now he said, I'm just going to call it a day.
Yeah. And
because he doesn't feel safe.
Right. And I mentioned fining players or suspending players, but also I think the team as a whole should be, so the ownership should be fined because they're not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. I know the MLB now has said each team has to have a compliance officer, which they should have had before this even started. And that's one thing that we're seeing is the MLB this baseball season is the guinea pig for the NFL, because the NFL is watching what's happening with baseball. And they had a lot of time to say, make those flow charts that say, if A happens, then do this. If this happens, right, then you do this. And
if yes,
they didn't do, yeah, if yes or if no. And they didn't do that, and they were leaving it up to the teams. But in the case of the Marlins, I really think it was just a complete lack of regard on the part of the coaching staff and the ownership, because even Derek Jeter's statement afterward was very like, yeah, this happened, and yeah, they played the game, and yeah, they maybe affected the other team, they could have infected the other team, but we're going to move on. It wasn't a big
there's
deal.
No reason to dwell in the past.
Right. Yeah. When this potentially, they could have just called it with the amount of players.
Well, imagine if a player that's only exposure would have been on the field, say 2 Phillies, actually even just one. Let's say the first baseman for the Phillies tests positive, a true positive, not these false tests, but actually gets it. That right there could have shut down the league, because right there, a lot of players would have said, wait, just from the guy being on first base. Well, sometimes in the games, you're second or third, or, we saw in one game, there was a collision at the plate. Things like that happen. A lot of players would have said, sayonara, I'm out of here. Yeah. I'm not going to do this. And that would have not only affected it, but at that point, baseball would have had to say, yeah, this is a little too close If they can get it that easily, we need to reconsider this completely. And the Japanese league, if somebody tests positive on a team, they shut down the league for 2 weeks. Not just one, everything. The elephants are definitely stampeding through. This isn't just one elephant in a room. This is crazy.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
When we last visited the Dodger segment, we were a little unsure of where things were going. The Dodgers started off looking really good. They ended that opening weekend series not looking so good. And then they went to Houston.
Yes. Houston, we do not have a problem because the Dodgers won both games. It was a 2-game series. There was a lot of hype surrounding the Dodgers going to Houston. This is the first time they had met since the dreaded 2017 World Series that ended in 7 games with the Asterics winning by cheating.
And this is the first time that they've met since all of those allegations and the report has come out, and since it got Manfreded all up.
Yes. And there were, during spring training, there was a lot of back and forth with some of the players, Cody Bellinger being one of them, that said they stole the ring. They stole the ring from us. And then on the other hand, you had Carlos Correa, who was like, we earned this. And yeah.
We didn't do anything wrong.
We didn't do anything wrong.
Even if we did cheat, we still beat you, so who cares?
So game 1, also Walker Buehler started that game, and it was decent. It was okay. He went a little over 3 innings, 3.2 innings, had 3 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, and 3 strikeouts. One of those hits was a home run for Carlos Correa. And he just has a face that you want to punch. You know, there's just people that you just want to punch them.
Okay, when we get to the Angels, who just played the Astros as well, I have somebody to talk about that needs to get punched as well.
So you're already going in, the Dodgers are already going into Houston. It's a hyped game, not only for Dodger fans, maybe for the Asterics fans. I don't know. I think they were hiding in trash cans on Twitter.
The Astros fans were invested in it from the standpoint of, if the Astros win, that settles it. We were the better team. We're the better team now.
So Walker Buehler comes in. He lasts a little over 3 innings. And then the bullpen comes in, does a great job. And then in the 6th inning, dun, 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 Joe Kelly arrives on the mound. Now, Joe Kelly was not a member of the Dodgers in 2017. He was a Red Sox. He had his own dealings with the Asterics. And Joe Kelly, we know that Kelly Fight Club, he's which we are very familiar with. I think it's more blue collar. He's really rough around the edges kind of guy.
He comes from the town that our grandparents lived in almost all of your life and almost all of mine.
Yeah. Joe Kelly comes in. During this time, we're watching the game. I don't really think anything about it because you know that there can't be a fight club happening, because that would go against the social distancing rules. And I know that the Dodgers are a classy team, so they're going to put this, above. But Joe Kelly comes to the mound, and Alex Bregman is walked, and he does get a ball.
Let's just say that there was control issues.
There were
Joe Kelly but he was throwing like Joe Kelly.
He does, yeah, and that was the other
It wasn't like
thing.
It was something different. The point in the game that Joe Kelly comes in, he was not in a position where it was like, hey, I'm just going to throw at somebody.
Right.
It made no sense to do that.
Yeah.
Based on the game situation.
Anybody saw Joe Kelly pitch in, was it game 5 against the Nationals last year? Gave up a grand slam to Howie Kendrick. And if you've ever seen him pitch anytime, it's very rare that he has just a really smooth outing. So Alex Bregman, he went up a little bit in our book. He's still in the negative number as far as our likability, but ball goes past him, little close, too close for comfort. He had the look on his face like, all right, it happened.
He was not happy with it, but he didn't let it control him. He knew what it was, and he has said in the past, right, about players' justice.
Yeah, on the field. And that's one of the things he likes about baseball is because players take care of it. You don't need anybody else to settle it. The players settle it. So he took his base. The next guy, the punching bag, Carlos Correa, comes up, and he strikes out. Now, there was a ball. It was not at his head, although there were a lot of people who apparently are in that understand and know Joe Kelly's mind so well that they knew he was throwing at their heads, and he wasn't. It's Joe Kelly. I mean, he broke a window at his house 2 days before his twins were born.
He didn't do that on. He didn't do that on accident. That's part of his routine. Just like in the movie Bull Durham, Ebby Calvin LaLoosh finally is pitching like they know he can. And Crash Davis, the catcher, comes out and says, throw the next one at the Bull, who's the mascot, right? And he's like, why? I'm finally throwing it where I want to. He goes, just throw it at the Bull. So he gets over there. He throws the next one at the Bull. And, of course, the catcher's jawing at the hitter. And who's a younger guy. And he's like, that guy's crazy. And he goes, yeah, I wouldn't dig in too much if I was you because I don't know where the next one's going. I don't.
Joe Kelly.
And, of course, he's there. Joe Kelly is Ebby Calvin LaLoosh when it comes to that. He's all over the place, and you don't know. He keeps you unsettled. I'm not saying that in the back of his mind, when it went by him, Alex Bregman's head, when it went by Carlos Correa's head, up and over, it was well behind Carlos Correa. It wasn't like the catcher couldn't even get to it.
Mm-mm.
I don't think that his intention was to throw at them, but I know he owned it once it happened. And even Oral Hershiser said, you don't apologize.
He said, make the hitter think about it, just like in Bull Durham, like, what was that?
Right.
But Carlos Correa being Carlos Correa, he did strike out. And of course, he had to have some words. And Joe Kelly's famous pouty lips came out, which is everywhere. And
something
that's what
to the
started.
Effect of nice swing. And here's where I have an issue with this whole thing. Before we move on to positives within the Dodgers, and we can finish this up, is that Joe Kelly earlier play at first, and I don't know what was going on there. It looks weird. Michael Brantley hit a ball on his way to first. It seems like Joe Kelly's trying to find the bag. Now, whether he's doing that on purpose, not to trip up Brantley or to do that, but just to keep moving his foot around, because then Brantley's got to keep in mind where's his foot and maybe make Brantley make a mistake. I have no problem with that. If he was actually going over there to try to cause something beyond that, then that's different. But in that, Dusty Baker, who seems to have taken on the whiny Astro way, the Asterisk, tells Joe Kelly to get back on the mound and then uses an expletive in that. And then later blames Joe Kelly for what he said to Carlos Correa about nice swing. And then this is a somewhat of a family show, so we'll omit any of the language. Here's what I saw, though. was that Joe Kelly goes off. He's doing that like a little kid, and then he does that wah, 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 wah kind of thing, and then the pouty face, and he goes over, and then he also uses an expletive because Carlos Correa's yelling at him, and he finally just says, fine, you want to go adult-like? Well, here's my adult buzzword.
Yes.
But if you notice, Joe Kelly, who gets an 8-game suspension out of this,
which is crazy,
is walking to his dugout. Carlos Correa, on the other hand, is walking towards the Dodger dugout.
In violation of social distancing rules.
And clearly being the aggressor at that point. I'm not saying Joe Kelly didn't instigate some stuff there, but just like Bregman, he should have followed, Correa should have followed Bregman. Bregman said, whatever. He got up and he was a professional about it. When you look at everything, and Dusty Baker says it's all Joe Kelly's fault.
But Dusty Baker
was almost in the Dodger dugout.
Yes, and he didn't stop his team from coming from their dugout all the way over to the Dodger dugout.
The only reason the Dodgers were out of their dugout was because they were going to protect their guy, Joe Kelly.
That's
right.
And
anybody else.
But
they did all stop short of having a brawl and all of that. But Dusty Baker's all the way over there. His whole team is all the way across the field. They're all on the third base side. They're on the wrong side of home plate.
Yep.
And Dave Roberts said, fine, I'll take my 1-game suspension. I didn't control my team. So he takes that. The Dodger players, nobody else got that, but they were all standing there, but they were right at their dugout. And Joe Kelly was heading to the dugout. He gets 8 games because he pouted at somebody. And once again, the Astros' almighty protector, Mother Manfred, Manfreded him again. Manfred's the new word instead of what Joe Kelly said. He just Manfred you. You know, it just something because it's just ridiculous how that played out.
Yeah, and as you said, Dave Roberts was suspended 1 game. He served his suspension. Joe Kelly 8 games, which is like the equivalent of 22 games if it was a full season, which is unheard of. Carlos Correa gets nothing, and Dusty Baker gets fined, even though he obviously did not control his team. And in the middle of all of this is the elephant that is the Asteriks still are considered the World Series champions for 2017. They got fined, I think, the team like $5 million, but the players weren't hurt in any way.
Apparently, the players are still under the protection.
They have to be. So Joe Kelly did appeal, has appealed the suspension. Haven't heard anything about that. He did pitch in Arizona when the Dodgers went to Arizona. But the whole thing, it's ridiculous. And that became not just a Dodger Asteriks feud. Now they cheated, and it's evident because if you look at their batting average in the 2 games, this is the Asteriks 2 games, before in 2017, their batting average against the Dodgers was 267. In the 2 games, their batting average was 158. There's no trash cans. Although I did really like your idea of instead of the cutouts, they had cutouts of trash cans.
Oh, I think they should put actual trash cans.
Oh, right.
Not even
they don't need to have cutouts, just real
trash cans.
But the problem with that would be is if the Astros were following protocols, maybe, and the players are sitting in the stands, they might feel the need to bang on one. And maybe that's why they've been banned.
Well, no, they only do it in that section behind, because see, they have cutouts there. They just don't have any cutouts behind home plate.
Right.
The cutouts are mostly out in whatever they call that area below the train tracks out there. I don't know what Crawford boxes, I think is what they call them. And so they're out there, and at least they have the cutouts, or they could put the trash cans. They don't have to be like Peralta of the Diamondbacks, who wanted teddy bears and other stuffed animals all out in the outfield to remind him of the fan.
which are usually all Dodger fans.
Right. That's what people have said. San Diego, the Padres have cutouts. They said when the Dodgers come, will they put like 70% Dodger fans?
That's right. But going back, I think a lot of people thought, okay, as you said before, if the Astros won the series, that settles it. Well, the Dodgers won the series. First game, 5-2. Second game, 4-2 in innings. And that settled it, but it's still unsettled because now Joe Kelly is the folk hero, not only of the United States, but Canada too. They're like
everyone. Ready to give him whatever the highest award in Canada is. He's already, now he's in the Canadian Hall of Fame. I think right. Justin Trudeau is going to give him, like we have, the presidential medals that they give people. I think he's in line for one of those now. He's definitely player of the week.
He is. But this whole thing, it will continue, and it'll continue for, I think, especially for guys like Correa, who just will not give in. He's the guy, he knows he's guilty. He has to know, or he's just so dense he doesn't know. And he just is not, deep down he knows, but he's not going to admit to it. And
he had a really bad series in Anaheim,
which is even better.
So the Asterisk will show up in LA in September 12th and 13th, 2 games set to finish out that. And then of course we have next year where they'll actually play probably, they'll do a home and away, probably 3 each. So although when it's interleague, it can be 2, but 2 years in a row. So the question will be, will this carry over, especially when next year, if everything's normal, I guess, air quotations, that they'll actually be able to battle it out, maybe have a Royal Rumble. And I think if that's the case, the Dodgers need to re-sign Yasiel Puig right before that series for like one of those 10-day contracts or whatever.
Just for that. Definitely. That. But we need to free Joe Kelly. That is...
I don't, even if they're going to give him a suspension, number one, Carlos Correa needs one as well, which we know is not going to happen because he has immunity, apparently, from everything forever when it comes to baseball. But even if they give it to him, 8 games, that is a big, he didn't hit him. Yeah. I don't think he threw at their heads. And to go back to our new favorite, John Heyman, even said the Dodgers didn't say he didn't do that. They basically said, yeah, maybe he did. And I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter whether they admit to it or not, or if they imply, sure. They never came out and said, yeah, that was the case. We were throwing at him, because they're not going to say that. And he should be, and why would they? Now the Astros have it in their head that the Dodgers are not going to play games with them on this, that the Dodgers are mad. And it doesn't matter that, you know what, we'd rather hit you in the head with a baseball than give you COVID-19. And COVID-19 will cause you more problems.
That's right.
Although I guess if you get hit in the head with the baseball, that could cause a few problems.
It could cause a lot of problems too. But the whole thing has been Manfreded, yes, because it's been called, the World Series trophy. It's just a piece of metal. So we know which side he is on, and he continues to Manfred everything up. I like that. I'm going to keep using that. But Corey Seager has not had anything. Manfred has been away. So hopefully he continues this season without being Manfreded up, because he is 361 batting average, 3 home runs. He's 13 for 36. He has 6 RBIs. He is true MVP every time he comes up to the plate, playing hard, looks really good, was out the 2018 season with 2 surgeries, hip and on his shoulder, his arm. And he's just looking, Yeah, exact. Tommy John surgery. So he's just looking really good. Now, he didn't play on Sunday because he had been hit in the calf by a foul ball on Friday night's game. He did play Saturday, but he left after 6 innings with a cramp. Dave Roberts said he thought it was probably dehydration. So he's day to day, but I don't expect him to be out of the lineup for much longer. But he is a real bright spot in the Dodger lineup. AJ Pollock. He is 8 for 27, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, 370 batting average. He's healthy, which has always been an issue for him. In every season, he has always had some type of health issue. Last year, he was out because he had I think it was we broke his elbow. So he had a metal plate in his elbow. And then last year that caused an infection. So then he had to have that removed. So then he was out. And he was always the guy that came up to the plate like, all right, we're going to get an out.
Well, and we talked about it last week where he got that double and then nothing happened. It's like, well, normally he gets an out and then they rally around him. He's just the one out or the second out in the inning, and the rest of the team picks it up. That's not been the case since that double.
Yeah, he just looks really good and he's happy. Played center field on Saturday's game, but he's usually in left field, but he's doing it all. So I'm glad to see AJ Pollock in a good spot, and I hope it continues. Now, Cody Bellinger, I'm not sure what's going on, but he was out of the lineup on Saturday's game, which was a good move on Dave Roberts' part. He just needed to be out of the lineup. He was MVP last year. He comes into this season and he's going to change his batting stance, which makes no sense to me. If you have something that's working, why change it?
All right. So yesterday I'm watching one of the shows on MLB, and Mark DeRosa talks specifically about Cody Bellinger and answered the question. I didn't go back and look at the whole season and breakdowns, but Cody Bellinger's season was made in his first 107 games where he was on top of everything. Everything was above average. In his last 57 games, everything dropped by half. He was still a solid hitter, he was contributing, and this kind of made sense. DeRosa's like, well, how do I get back to what I was doing the first 107 games versus what I did the last 57? And that pushed him to make some changes.
Yeah, but the changes haven't worked because
I know that's the thing is that, but see that when he first said about that, I was watching when they were playing the Diamondbacks in exhibition at the beginning of the season, and it seemed like he was doing fine. He was hitting the ball well, but then you got to think about it. He was hitting the ball fine in intra-squad games, not a big deal. Even those exhibition games, even though it was against a different team, there was a lot of things that made it more like just a practice versus an actual competitive or somewhat competitive game.
Yeah.
And that caused an issue.
Right. Yeah. He's 9 for 40. He has a 150 batting average, and he has 1 home run, which he hit on Sunday when he was back in the lineup. He had a 2-run homer in Sunday's game, but he looks uncomfortable in the box when he gets up to bat. He looks uncomfortable to me. I also noticed that he needs a haircut. And so I'm wondering if he gets a haircut, if that will help with his batting.
Perhaps that's what the problem
because
is. His helmet's not on right. It's off just a little bit.
It's his hair. It's too bushy.
You know, normally you'd go, that's just ridiculous. But there are little things, because we see it even in our own day-to-day jobs. If something's just off a little bit, it can throw you completely off.
Yeah, I was not able to watch the series in Arizona because MLB has that blackout rule, which is so dumb because it's a 60-game season. Can you please just give the fans this one time where we can just watch whatever game we want?
I think that if you do it if you live in the city, or in the actual TV market where you can see the games on TV, that's fine. You watch it on your local channel. That's what it's all about. But you live between two different markets and they both cover you. So you get, and unfortunately, they're both Western Division cities who play your favorite team. Normally, well, and even this season, 20 of the games this season are against these two teams. So that's 20 games that you have to listen to Charlie Steiner do a game, which is probably better than listening to the Colorado Rockies TV. But
yeah, they're kind of whiny. But I will say I did listen to the game, 5:70 a.m. MLB app, and the Dodgers lost. So I made, because I'm very big jinxes, it's just part of baseball. So I said, I'm not going to listen to the radio coverage. I will just, go about my evening and, check the score here and there. And of course, you do help, because when you send me a text with one word with the name in Mookie with exclamation points, I know something good has happened, a home run, or he nabs somebody at third base.
Or didn't I say Mookie's in the pool?
Yes, or Mookie's in the pool. I knew exactly what that meant. So you helped me out in that regard, even though MLB is not helping me out this season because they are preventing me from seeing those
or
series.
Or anybody, for that matter.
Or anyone, really.
They continue to be their own worst enemy on that.
Yeah.
We could talk about that for days as well, because it's, once again, it's all Manfreded.
It is. Totally. Going with the Diamondback series, the Dodgers won that series 3-1. The second game, the game that I listened to, even though Charlie Steiner at one point called the Diamondbacks the Rockies, but that's lovable Charlie Steiner, right? That's what he does.
I don't know how many players have been on the wrong team. I'm surprised that he didn't say that Sandy Koufax was pitching versus the Diamondbacks when Kirsch went out there and pitched on Sunday.
It's just part of the whole, it's just one of the reasons. Like, do you listen to the game just for Rick Monday? Yes. Or do you listen to it just to see what Charlie Steiner's going to say? Right. Yes.
You do both. Right?
You do both. But in game 2 of that series, the Dodgers lost 5-3, and the bullpen has been excellent for the Dodgers. And in that game, they just imploded. I'm not sure what happened, but Blake Trinan, who had been really good coming out of the bullpen, he
had a hard day.
He had a hard day. But next game, Cody was out of the lineup. He was up in the stands. Dodgers went on to win 11-2. You had Chris Taylor had a home run, Mookie Betts, AJ Pollock. And then in the last game of the series, the Dodgers won 3-0. Cody hit the 2-run home run, which I'm sure is really great for him. It's, it's kind of that monkey off your back that I'm sure he had. Mookie hits into the pool, and it was Kershaw day, and Kershaw looked really good. Clayton went 5 2/3 scoreless innings. He had 6 strikeouts, no walks, and his velocity was up. So
that's good. Yeah, he looked good. It was on the same time as the Angels, so I was watching the Angels and then checking the Dodgers on my app on the phone. So I had them both going, but what I saw, he did look good. Only gave up 3 hits, so 81 pitches. I don't know if he could have gone more. Probably better that he didn't, but.
Probably better he didn't, but I did see in the game highlights when Dave Roberts came out to get him, I didn't think he wanted to leave. He didn't.
No, because he's probably feeling pretty good about it. So the Dodgers looked real good. They lost that one in Arizona. Next time we get together and talk about the Dodgers, we're going to talk about what they had coming up following this first week. And that is probably one of the hottest teams in baseball, even though they had a tough time in Colorado. Another hot team, the Padres.
Padres, yeah. And for this series, we've got Walker Buehler, Dustin May, and Ross Stripling pitching. So that will be good matchups there. Ross Stripling has a 2.92 ERA. He's 2-0, 9 strikeouts. Dustin May, 2.35, 7 strikeouts, and he's 2-0. Walker Buehler got a little beat up in Houston, but I'm looking for him to come back really strong in San Diego. He did get to summer warm-up late. He got there a week late. His showing in Houston is not indicative of Walker. So I think, yeah.
And it was a different game. The game in Houston's different. If he'd have started against the Giants, it would have felt different than he did starting against Asstericks.
Asterisk, yes. Eric Hosmer is on the IL right now.
Yep.
So will that make a difference?
I don't know. I mean,
ailment.
he's been doing well for them, but you have to look at what's been going on. They've been scoring late in games. They're almost unstoppable. Tatis Jr. is living up to the hype. Tony Pham right now looks like one of the greatest pickups in the offensive part of the Padres team. Their average is 26 years old. You look at Tommy Pham, who's 32, Eric Hosmer's 30. Everybody else is younger than that. Tatis is in his early 20s. Manny Machado is 27. You got these guys who are playing, they're playing above. Everybody saw this coming. I just don't think that a lot of the experts saw this coming this year.
Right. The bullpen of the Padres, they have a collective 5.08 ERA. That could be helpful for the Dodgers.
The starters have been okay, including former Angel Garrett Richardson. He's been pitching pretty well for him. And that's going to be one of the things. I think it's like what you saw with San Francisco. Get past a starter. Same thing with Houston. Their bullpen is like 10 rookies.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to say, going back to the Houston series with the Dodgers, have to give a player of the week mention. We know it's going to be Joe Kelly, but an honorable mention to Dennis Santana, who was lights out in that second game, did really well. He's a rookie coming into a situation where they were in innings, and the game where Justin Turner starts on second base, and the game still was over 4 hours. So it was that game was also Manfreded. So in that regard too. But I look for the Dodgers to go into San Diego. I think they're feeling good. They're looking good. I think it'll be a good series, and we'll see.
All right, so I guess I'll be watching the Dodgers most of the season, since it looks like the Angels have opted out as a team. Wait, I'm reading that they haven't opted out. It's just terrible pitching. I don't know what's going on in Anaheim, but the hopefulness that I had last week is gone. You can't win one game per series and expect to make it to the playoffs, even in a 60-game season.
Well, you do have a bright spot with Dylan Bundy. He is leading the pitching staff with a 2.84 ERA. He has 15 strikeouts. He has a .71 whip, which a whip is walks and hits per inning pitched, if you ever wondered. And so he's leading that rotation. The only thing is, though, that's what I was just going to say, is he's got good numbers, which is good for him because he struggled last year. And so to see him pitching well is good for the Angels. But we have seen where Joe Madden they're calling for his head in Anaheim. But is that who we really should be upset with?
I think a little bit at this point, because of the way that he's using the bullpen, not in the whole. I believe that the Angels, if we're going to go back and look at organizationally, we can only go with what Joe Madden has to work with. The pitching, the bullpen especially, has been terrible. Dylan Bundy has come out and pitched well. Griffin Canning pitched great against the Astros. I mean, he was on top of it, and that was the game that they won. There's pieces there, but I think that the problem isn't Joe Madden yet. The problem goes up, and for everybody that's hollering about Joe Madden, there's also people hollering about Billy Epler, the GM. I maintain that the problem, which Billy Epler obviously is part of that issue, but the bigger problem comes from above, and that's Artie Moreno. Artie Moreno is one of those rich owners. He doesn't want to keep up with the Joneses. He wants to be the Joneses. While we absolutely needed Anthony Rendon, who has started off his Angel career pretty well, he got upset because of the delay. We could have had Ross Stripling in our starting rotation. And look what he's been doing there. Not to say that he would have done the same thing with the Angels, but I believe he would have. We could have had Jock Peterson, which would have been another good bat. Instead, we don't have those guys. Instead, we have Dylan Bundy, who's pitching pretty well. He had a rough start and then was able to settle down and do well. But that's one big thing, too. We continue to spot the other team. You'd play a pickup basketball game, so I'll spot you 5, and we'll play to 15. Well, the Angels have been going out and spotting every team just about some runs. Sunday, they spotted them 2, and then Albert Pujols comes up with the bases loaded, and for the first time of all the times that they've loaded the base, hits a grand slam, which puts him within 6 of tying and 7 of passing A-Rod, which is what I'm rooting for this season, and 2 home runs away from tying Willie Mays.
Mm-hmm.
Coming home, the first night out, they took out the Mariners 10-2. Talking about Anthony Rendon. I keep wanting to call him Tony, but nobody calls him that. So I don't want to till I meet the guy, which probably not going to happen. I don't want to call him that. But Rendon, first hit out for the Angels, home run. More impressive, he has walked 9 times. I mean, every game he's walking once or twice. He started off well. I love watching him because I've always liked to see guys on the field of any team when they're happy and smiling. When you see Francisco Lindor, you see him enjoying it. Dubon from San Francisco, just briefly away from the Angels since they played that whole weekend with the Asterics. Kyle Tucker needs to be smacked in the face with an iron skillet. There's a look on his face, and he was smiling and looking happy, and I wanted to punch him. And there's just a look on it. It's an arrogant kind of smile, and he's got that Asterisk attitude.
Do they have a school, like a finishing school that they go through?
If they're going to call you up, you have to go through that. Here's the thing. They don't tell you about it until after you're going to actually make the big league team. Because what if they trade you when you're still in the minors? They don't want you to take
I think that's what happened with Dusty Baker, is he signed as a manager, and then they indoctrinated him. Yeah, and then, of course, you had to look at...
He's a Stepford manager.
Yeah. You had to look at Carlos Correa again in Anaheim. Now, I did want to say, I don't know how many fans showed up, but there were fans in Anaheim in the parking lot with trash cans and booing.
There was that. There were a few people out there banging with signs that said "Trash Stros."
So good on Angels fans.
There were people around to do that. It wasn't as if. It's interesting if you juxtapose the. I've always wanted to use that word. The Dodgers and the Angels Asterisk series. You can see that the Angels Asterisk was a little lower key. There wasn't the tension that you saw. I mean, it was obvious. And what I like to see in all that, Jose Altuve looks terrible. He looks really uncomfortable in the box. He's batting like 150 or something. Correa struck out 5 or 6 times. He wasn't even in the lineup one day because he's having that Cody Bellinger time where he's just going so poor, playing so poorly. Bregman was off a lot of it, and then he had his moments. The other guy that I want to see, and I'm mad about this, Yuli Gurriel only got 5-game suspension after he did that slanty eye look about Yu Darvish in the 2017 World Series. He got 5 games. Joe Kelly didn't do anything. He got 8. But Yuli Gurriel has great hair, and I can't like it. I love his hair too. It's awesome because it always stands up. It's different.
It's horrible. No, I can't stand it because I'm thinking, do you ever look in the mirror? He obviously doesn't. It's horrible.
I don't care, but I just enjoy his hair. But I can't because he plays for the Astros and he's a jerk. He's a Manfred.
Yeah.
You know.
There's a lot of. Well, it is Josh Reddick rubbing off on Tucker since they're both in the outfield, and because he has that face too.
Kyle Tucker, but Josh wasn't smiling, at all.
He never does.
Before, we want Alex Bregman to get hit by a bus. I want him to get hit by a bus that's dragging Josh Reddick behind it. Like in the old Westerns, when they tie somebody's boots and then send the stampeding horse off or whatever, and they drag the guy in the back. I see that, and I'm like, yes, that's what I want to see happen to Josh Reddick.
No love lost.
So, but to get back to the Dodgers. Let's not even go there. To get back to the Angels. See how far off it takes me? The Angels, there are highlights here. Brian Goodwin has been playing well. He's been hitting well. He had, last game of the series, not as great, but he's been there. He's been carrying the team. Justin Upton hit his 300th career home run. Great, but he's not hitting well across the board. David Fletcher has been playing pretty well. His numbers have been up and down. Started off the series a little down, had a couple of days where he couldn't hit anything. And, of course, Mike Trout was out through all of these series and is back with the team with the birth of bat. I was hoping they would name him Michael Vladimir Pujols Trout and then just call him MVP. But I got to give it to him. Bat for the initials is awesome. And Ross Stripling even tweeted that he already doesn't want to face him.
That's right.
Which, if he'd been traded to the Angels, he would have never had to face him because Bat will take over for his dad as the GOAT.
As center fielder, that's right. What about Max Stassi? He looks good.
Thank you. He's another guy, and that's the thing. Max Stassi has shown. I mean, he stepped up. 3-run homer. He's hitting the ball well. To me, he's a better defensive catcher than Castro. And Castro's been solid. He hasn't been bad at all. So our catchers this year have been good. The problem with Castro is that he's not able to block pitches as well as Stassi has shown himself to be. A lot of pitches getting away from Jason. So on the whole, we're still kind of in the same place. We're at the bottom of the West. We should have been able to at least take 2 of the 3 from Seattle. We played Houston much better than we did Seattle. And even innings-wise, Sunday's game, 11 innings. On Saturday, 10 innings. 2 of the games with Houston were innings. And they're not able to. I'm not sure what the average is with runners in scoring position, but it's not great. They load the bases. If you ever see on a LOB, it says lob on a box score. That stands for left on base. And when you see big numbers there, that means that's all the players that were left and nobody could bring them in. And you figure when you can go through a game where there's three different times that you load the bases and you leave them there. The other thing was that these games were really long. Over 12 hours of baseball. Every game, with the exception, of the 3 games, 2 of them were over 4 hours. One of them, the longest in Angels history, 4 hours and 21 minutes. And then walks. That was the biggest thing. Between the Astros and the Angels, 44 walks in 3 games. 19 on Friday, 6 on Saturday, and another 19. So no wonder Anthony Rendon has all those walks. That's in 3 games. He had 9 walks.
Wow.
Or no, that's in 6 games. I'm sorry, because he played 2 3-game series. In 6 games, he's got 9 walks. 44 walks just in a 3-game series between the two teams. So there's a lot going on, but the Angels will have their days. They put up numbers. They didn't get beat something to 1 or something to 0. They put up big numbers at different times. So they tried to come back, but when you give somebody 5 runs, or 6 runs, or 4 runs, and then you have to work to get back, and not everybody's hitting. And the problem is that, like we've talked about the Dodgers, every member of the Dodgers lineup, especially now with the DH, you can see where they could contribute. For the Angels, there are guys that you don't want to see. Anthony Rendon got intentionally walked when he was coming up because they weren't going to hit. They weren't going to pitch to him. They wanted to pitch to Brian Goodwin. They wanted to pitch to Justin Upton. There were players like that. So that's a harder thing to deal with the Dodgers and other teams. The Yankees come to mind. The Angels need to figure out their pitching. Joe Maddon said, I either have to believe in them or not. And I get the idea. You can't tell them, you can't not have confidence in them. And that's all he has to work with. He doesn't have anybody lower. Sunday's game, the bullpen was a little better. Shohei Ohtani still having issues, but he started out the first inning and we thought, good, he's back to normal. 8 pitches, looked good. Second inning, had some problems, but they stayed with him. He loaded up the bases. And then if you go look at it, his last pitch to Dustin Garneau was clearly a strike. And he called it a ball, which walked in a runner. And the wheels came off the bus. And then later on Sunday, found out that they were sending him for an MRI. And, is he having more issues? That's something we'll talk about at a later date. But today, if we don't get some strength in pitching, if, we need Dylan Bundy to be more consistent. We can't have him having that first inning. Matt Andres, who looked great coming in for Ohtani the previous Sunday, looked terrible. And I believe he's got to go to the bullpen, but we don't have another starter necessarily. Patrick Sandoval didn't look too bad on his start. But we either need to go to a bullpen by committee, start it. You start and just do every 2 or 3 innings for one start and do Griffin Canning, Dylan Bundy. And I don't know, who knows what happens going forward, but we really only have 2 starting pitchers that have done anything consistently.
Do you think the summer warm-up maybe played a factor in the showing right now with the Angels?
I think across the board for every team, but especially the Angels. I think that people reported, some of them reported late. The guys who aren't having the issue, Anthony Rendon didn't matter when he showed up. He could have showed up the day before his first game. He probably would have been fine. Not everybody can do that, especially the pitchers. And I think that's what we're seeing around the league.
Well, and you're missing a pitcher too, right? Has he come back, Julio?
No, Julio Teheran is still out. He's still working up. He's in Long Beach. We need him to show up. We need Matt Andres to have more closer to those outings he had on that first outing on that Sunday against the A's, because this next one, he looked like Shohei on that day. They reversed roles. He came in and only lasted an inning and a third.
I wonder with Shohei Ohtani, with him not having pitched for so long, and then he had surgery, and we heard reports, he's throwing, he's getting back on the mound, he looks good. If it's if it is, hopefully the MRI comes back negative, but if it is more mental, because he's never been in a situation like this.
No, and I believe it is, because at bat, he started off really slow, and he hit an incredible 3-run homer on a ball that it was a Vladimir Guerrero type hit. I had to go down. It was about a foot off the ground, and if you see it, it's an incredible home run. I mean, it just shows muscle. And he had 2 home runs in there. He had a double. He started hitting, and you could see his confidence coming back. After that first inning on Sunday, his confidence seemed to coming back. But I think that his arm strength is not where it needs to be. He has to get it. He has to build that up. There's something there, and the mental part of it. As that inning went on, you could see him. You could see what was going through his brain. You could see it in his face that he was losing confidence in his pitches. So if the Angels can just keep it together and go on a run, the West is by far the least out of all of the divisions. Nobody's running away with anything yet in the West. And as of the weekend, the first week, the A's and the Astros are only 5-4. The Angels 3-7 at the end of that first 10 games. They're not out of it because nobody's playing spectacularly, and they showed that they can hang with the Astros.
Yeah, and I think that's big, because like you said, none of the games against the Astros were blowouts. They lost the series, but they lost, 9-6, 6-5, and then they won 5-4. But so they were close games. So they have it in them. There's always hope for the Angels.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what the score is, though. It's still an L.
That's true. But
and in the end, the thing is, with this year, making the playoffs is what's this all about. That's where the real season will be. Now it's time to take a quick look around the league. Some of the things we took note of over the opening week, over the first sixth of a season for most teams. Obviously, if you're the Marlins, you're still in the first 3 games of your season. Maybe they want to quit right there. 2-1, 667 winning percentage. I'm in the playoffs. Yeah.
I think that might be part of their strategy. I really do.
So let's take a look first at the Western divisions, both the NL and the AL. We talked a little bit about the Padres being the team, and up until they got to Colorado, they were crazy. What was it you were telling me about stolen bases? Did Tatis have like 8 stolen bases or something already, or 7? Or?
I think it was 7. I think it was across the board, but I think he had the majority of them. Now, in the West, we have the Padres and Dodgers series coming up. Dodgers, their ERA, their pitching staff is 1.84. They have the best ERA right now in the West. And
what are the Padres hitting as a team?
They're hitting, well, they're averaging like 5.9 runs per game. And so that will be a really good series. But again, you don't have Eric Hosmer in there, who has started off really well. So
and as stolen bases, just to go back to that real quick, Tatis has 3. He does not lead the team. Tommy Pham has 5.
Oh, see, I would have never guessed Tommy Pham.
Tommy Pham leads the Padres with a 306 average. Grisham leads in home runs with 3. Pham has stolen bases, on base percentage, and then Grisham. Grisham is the other guy who is Trent Grisham is leading. So between Pham and Grisham, they are tearing things up as far as and really leading the Padres. Jurickson Profar, former Texas Ranger, has been doing well as well. So, Yeah, it's they are a good-looking team right now. Now, when they got to Colorado, the Rockies had been looking pretty good, but the Rockies had only really played the Rangers.
That's it.
And the
But
Rangers, while they're better than the Angels as far as their record goes, they aren't looking that good. Giants seem to have their number, as the Rangers number as well. But the Rockies are looking good. Former Dodger Matt Kemp, a couple of home runs already for the Rockies, looking pretty good.
Trevor Story is leading the team with 4 home runs, 2 stolen bases, and his slugging percentage 759. His OPS is a 1.231. He also has been walked 7 times because I think other teams are noticing Trevor Story. Charlie Blackmon, he came out. He was one of the first players that was announced that he had coronavirus. This was before summer warm-up, but he's come back. He's got 7 RBIs and 12 hits. Yeah, the Rockies are looking good, but it's interesting because it's the Trevor Story. Where is Nolan Arenado?
Where is Nolan?
I don't know.
He's still playing defensively. He's still there without much of an issue. The problem is he's not contributing beyond that.
That's it. So it'll be interesting to see. The Rockies have always been a team that they always get so close and then it falls apart.
Well, we're going to talk about playoffs a little bit later here. And this year would work the way they're playing. If they can stay like this, this could be a good year for them.
It could be.
Yeah, Nolan Arenado is batting .226, no home runs, only 1 RBI.
Very unlike Nolan to be there. I mean, but you also are looking at, and this goes for all the teams, and even Cody Bellinger. I really think if Cody gets a haircut, it could really help. I'm going to stand by that. So, but it's early on.
Sending him a message.
I will.
Cody, get a haircut. You'll get a hit.
I'm going to
get
tweet
it cut.
him.
Get a hit. I'll have to. You know what? I have a friend who's a barber. His name's Brian. He has the new California barbershop in Echo Park on Sunset. Just to give him a little plug. I know he listens occasionally. I'll call Brian and say, "Hey, Cody Bellinger needs a haircut. He's just down in San Diego. I'm sure they could work out a deal for you to go in. Maybe even get to sit among the cutouts, and it's Petco, so there's a lot of pets. He's a big dog guy."
If it works, that would be great. Looking at these percentages, batting averages, it's easy because it is just 60 games, and you want everyone to start off really well, and they're not. So you get a little panicked, I think, is what some of us are doing when it comes to, especially guys like Cody Bellinger, or being able to see Shohei pitch and be where he was and what he's capable of. It will be interesting with the West. Colorado right now is 6-2. They're in first place. The Dodgers are in second. Then San Diego, San Francisco, and then Arizona at 3-7.
Right. As of the first week of the season.
The first week of the season.
I think that I didn't believe that the Diamondbacks had anything going for them when I saw them in exhibition games. I think they have a lot of problems there. They have some people there that can do something. I think they're like in a rebuild like the Giants. And bringing up the Giants, we were talking about walks in that Angels Houston series. I forgot about the last one with Rendon. Rendon's actually been walked 10 times because they walked him at the end of the game, intentional base on balls, and he still doesn't lead major leagues. Mike Yastrzemski has been walked 11 times in his short season. David Fletcher, another Angel who's been up there. So when it comes together, I think that we're kind of seeing that the teams that we expected to be at the top, if they're not there, they're not out of it. They're not falling already to 3-7, which at this point in this season, short or not, is still, because you go 8-2 all of a sudden. And at this point, you're right back into it. You're up to around 500 in your next 10 games or a little over. So there's a lot of options. I don't want to buy into this. It's a sprint. And if you're falling apart now, because if that's the case, then the Angels fans, the Diamondback fans, other teams, when the Orioles, if the season ended today, the Orioles would be could be in the playoffs. That tells you that something's out of whack with the season to begin with. And the Tigers are, I think, 500. So I think in the NL West, I think we're going to see the separation. I think we're going to see the Dodgers finally rise up to the top and pretty much stay there. The Padres are going to level out, and I think we started to see that with the series about the Rockies. I think we're going to see Dodgers and then Padres, Rockies kind of back and forth, and the Giants and the Diamondbacks are going to be at the bottom there for the season. And then with the AL West, that one's a hard one to say. I think that Houston and Oakland will be at the top because they're the two strongest teams. I think the Mariners might actually end up being in third. As much as I'd like to see the Angels turn it on, I didn't feel like the Angels were going to be better than probably a 30-30 type team, maybe 28-32. That once the Astros start playing more the Rangers, they play. I mean, the Angels are a strong team. They just don't have it put together, and until the pitching comes together, I think that that's the other part with the Astros. George Springer's been off to a terrible start. Altuve, Correa's had his ups and downs. As a whole, Bregman's even was batting 2-something when he came in
like
the series.
211.
222, maybe down to 211. When you look at it, there's a lot of these teams that just aren't playing up to what they will. But as they get back into sync, we're going to start seeing that. The A's took a beating from the Rockies during the week. That just says more about the Rockies than it does about the A's. But when the AL West, I think we'll once again see the teams that are always there go up, and the rest will be the mix between the Mariners, which is a rebuild team, and they started out pretty well at points last year, and then finally fell apart. Actually, last year they started out great; they were on top of everything. The Rangers, I think the Rangers are going to have problems because I don't think they're happy in their field, and I don't think they've even hit a home run at home yet.
I don't think so either.
I think next season, the walls come in, the back wall. I think they're going to bring the fences in a little bit because they're not. Trevor Story hit the first 2 home runs there, so that'll be the West is strong in the big picture, but only at the top. I don't think that with this new playoff that we're going to see. We may see 3 teams out of the West. But we're only going to see 1 and 2 out of the NL, but out of the AL, it'll just be whoever the top 2 teams are, which right now I would say Houston and Oakland.
Yeah, unless something, like you said, unless something drastic happens. But yeah, the AL West out of between the East and the Central Division, those guys, they're actually all more, there's no one running away with it at this point. So any of those teams, if they did get on a good run, could really put themselves in a good position. We'll have to see.
Let's take a look at the Central, which I'm thinking about changing the Central from the Central to the K division. And I'll tell you more about that in a second. First, though, an unusual happening, unless you're in Chicago, because just last year, the White Sox did this. And the first time for the Cubs since 1997, they got a triple play.
Yeah, they were playing the Reds, and Chris Bryant caught the ball on the fly, according to the ruling on the field, although replays suggest that the ball may have bounced before entering his glove, but it's not eligible for replay review.
It's not review eligible.
Yeah, I've watched it a few times, and one time I think, no, he caught it. Another, I'm like, no, I don't think that ball bounced.
If it was reviewable, I only saw it once, It did look like, I couldn't tell, but if it was reviewable, do you think they would have overturned it?
In this case, I think it wouldn't be overturned. I think they would have stayed with the ruling on the field because it's too inconclusive. Yeah, and Chris Bryant was very adamant about, I caught that ball.
Things like that are exciting. You just let it play. If it was that close, and the only time that you care is if you're on the opposing team and or you're a fan of the opposing club, and then you're mad about it because you're like, no, it bounced. He couldn't have done that. That's not a triple.
Right. And even if you were a Reds fan and you were saying, no, that wasn't a triple play, in the end, it didn't matter because the Reds won 12-7.
Right. In the end, that's what you got to always look at. Who got the W?
But it was cool because triple plays are obviously a Chicago thing. Maybe they could put that on their Chicago, home of the triple play.
Right. They could do that. Could go with a local radio station. You know how rock stations always do that, 2 for Tuesday, triple play Thursday. They could do that.
Yeah.
We're home of the Cubs and triple plays. Here's a 3 from Zeppelin.
Now, the Chicago, even though they lost, they are currently sitting atop of the Central at 7-2. But they've won their last 3 as of the first series of games.
Now, if you go up the road a little bit, a team that has been affected by COVID-19 postponements is the Brewers. Now, if I'm a Brewers fan, the one thing that I hope came out of the fact that we had to set out the St. Louis Cardinals series is that maybe Christian Yelich will be able to get back on course, be back to that MVP instead of batting, 37?
He is 1 for 27, and the one hit is a home run. So
even
he
Bob
has that
Uecker,
going for him.
Bob Uecker's worst season, and I know this is just based on a small amount of games, and all it's going to take is for 2 or 3 hits, and it'll be back up higher. But this is shocking for MVPs, just like we talked about Cody Bellinger. When you look at Cody Bellinger's numbers, he's batting, 150. Well, that's not what you want to see.
Last season, Yelly versus Belly, and they're both either not playing the game right now, they're not playing horse. Maybe they both. We know Cody needs a haircut. Maybe Christian needs a haircut. I don't know, but he is struggling. Milwaukee is still at 500 right now, but they did have those games that they didn't play with the Cardinals. So where would they be?
Right now, they'll have to do the double headers, which, just real quick, we'll talk about double headers another day about how that works. Trevor Bauer gets a complete 7-inning game. That throws me off. I hate this whole 7-inning thing, and that's a talk for another day. But it does bring up why I think they should be calling the Central the K's. Both the AL and the NL. The Reds pitchers, Trevor Bauer, Luis Castillo, Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray, 20 strikeouts on the season. Luis Castillo, 17. Trevor Bauer, 13. And these are over just a couple of starts. They have been just on fire with that.
Trevor Bauer was strutting around the mound in the Conor McGregor style during that game, but also brings up the guy who's on fire, Shane Bieber of the Cleveland Indians. He is 2-0. He has a 0 ERA. 7 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 27 strikeouts.
See what I'm saying?
Something in the water.
And it is. It has to be because it's all Ohio. Cincinnati, 3 guys with great strikeouts. Cleveland, Shane Bieber, 27. Carlos Carrasco, 15. Clevenger and Plesac, both at 11 per. These guys are on fire. That's why it's all the K division. And then Tyler Alexander broke the record, 9 Ks in a row for the American League record. 9 Ks in a row. He was 1 K away for the Major League record, which was, do you know?
12.
Nope, it's 10.
I was going to
By
say 10, but I
Tom Seaver.
inflated. Yes,
Tom
Tom
Seaver.
Seaver, of course.
So here's a guy that for the Tigers, who are a team that was a very worst team last year, even though I always think it's the Orioles, by character, it seems like it's the Marlins. The Tigers are playing 500 ball right now. I don't know that they'll hold on to it, but if they continue, if Matthew Boyd, younger pitchers had some good outings, if overall with their staff, they can stay on it. Miguel Cabrera is hitting decently. So there's a lot of options there. I feel like the Central is going to end up being the division where you'll have a couple of teams maybe drop to the bottom and everybody else is going to fight for the top in both the NL and the AL.
I wonder, we've got the K capital of the world in Ohio, but we also have Twitter wars going on between Mike Clevenger and Trevor Bauer. So that might also be playing into...
Ohio seems to be the place to be baseball-wise.
Yeah. And so maybe that's sparking the intensity of the rivalry there.
When we talk about the second week, we'll be able to talk about how things turned out when the Indians and the Reds played each other.
Oh, and I want to mention the Twins. They're 7-2. They're at the top of the division right now. But we talked about Kenta Maeda. He was a Dodger. Dodger fans love Kenta, but when I heard he was being traded, my first thought was this will be good for him because he wanted to be a starter, but he was in the bullpen, and he came out of the bullpen. He was really good, but he wanted to be something, and the Dodgers, they weren't going to put him as a starter all the time. But he is 2-0 with a 1.64 ERA. So he's fitting in really nicely in Minnesota. It was a good move for him. He's doing really well and is feeling comfortable there. So good for Kenta.
Since you brought up Minnesota, I hate cutouts overall, except for the Twins. They have just big, giant heads.
Fat heads.
And like when you look, the camera shot from center field in, they've got Kirby Puckett and other well-known Twins players throughout there, but it's just big, giant heads, not the bodies. In some of the places, the cutouts aren't right if they cut it out, but instead you kind of get some background to it or whatever. That's one of the best. If you're going to do cutouts, follow the Twins. If you want to win games, hit home runs like the Twins. Let's shift over and look at the East, is home of Aaron Judge, who is the AL Player of the Week, with good reason.
No wonder there. 6 home runs in 5 games.
Yep.
He's on fire. And that's all you saw. If you were following Twitter, it was, here comes the Judge, all rise. Every time he was hitting a home run. So the Yankee fans are excited.
There was a highlight in one where I saw a home run and I didn't catch who they said hit it. I went, oh, Aaron Judge was another home run. It turned out it was Gio Urshela.
The Yankees are 7-1. They have the best record in all of the divisions. They've won their last 6. No surprise there. But the summer warm-up for them went well, but it was really not the summer warm-up. It was the break time because Aaron Judge had a broken rib, and that was healed. Obviously, it's healed. There were lots of injuries there, and these guys
Carlos Stanton, another one that wouldn't have been bad. I think there's 3 or 4 of their players, of their main players, the guys who are contributing right now a lot, that wouldn't have been there without the COVID break.
Right. So that really helped the Yankees. And there is no, I don't think in anyone's mind, unless the Yankees just fall off the cliff, then they're going to be number 1 in the East. At this point, there's nobody. I mean, the closest is Baltimore, and they're 5-3.
And I see them probably falling off. Watching the Sunday night Yankees Red Sox game, you forget about the Red Sox. They're towards the bottom after the first week, but you you forget that they have like Xander Bogaerts, who is having a great season to start. They still have guys who can get it done, and they will compete. I believe they're one of those teams that will rise up again. And I don't think they're going to I don't think the Yankees are going to get a run for their money in this season.
No.
With them right now, you can almost write off the rest of the AL East. The rest of the East, obviously the NL East, I'm not sure what's going on over there, because that's the division that has been thrown the most into chaos because of the Marlins. The Phillies haven't played because the Marlins played there. So it cut all those games. The Nationals, they played the Blue Jays at home, and then they didn't play anybody because they said, we're not going to Miami. And then nobody's coming in to see them. The Yankees and Orioles played each other, but they were supposed to be playing the Phillies or the Marlins. The NL East is probably the one. And now the question is, what's going on with the Mets? Because Cespedes opts out saying it's for COVID-19, but it was weird the way it was handled by the team when they announced it. Oh, we don't know where he's at, but we think he's okay.
Yeah, it's like he was missing, but
right.
He's okay.
Did he get abducted?
Right.
And then it comes out that he's not a gruntled employee. He's a disgruntled employee, as it sounds, because he thinks that he's being benched or not used to make sure he doesn't meet or reach the incentives in his contract. And just by being healthy on opening day, he was already going to make like a couple million more prorated than he would have if he'd have been injured. And he came out, he's the first DH home run in a National League game, but he's not been doing well overall. Still, what do you expect? 2 years of not playing, he's still getting back into it. But I believe that there's issues between him and the team. And once again, the Mets didn't handle it well.
It is very strange, but I do think it's more than just COVID. Also because his agent was very involved in the whole situation. And I think, yeah.
That makes me believe that they were trying to go negotiate something.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
The NL East is a train wreck. We said the Central is going to be competitive, and it's going to be interesting to see how they do. And it's more because of parity in the Central that's going to be a tough one. But in the East, as we said, the AL East, right now it almost looks like the Yankees have already won it just by the way they're playing. I know it's early, but it's not that early.
Right.
And then in the NL East,
I don't know.
You know what?
Got Atlanta.
If I was in Vegas setting the lines, I would not set a line for that. There's no betting on the East.
No. Well, I mean, right now you have Atlanta 7-3, but then you have Miami, who's 2-1, which again could be part of a strategy going forward. Now, is that
like
going to work?
Dodgeball? It looks like they're going to have to forfeit. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have Washington, Philadelphia, but Philadelphia got caught in with the Marlins. You know, the Marlins really screwed everything. And
after the first week, they and the Marlins have only played 3 games. Now that's going to change as the second week comes up. The Phillies are going to be playing, other teams, not the Marlins, and other teams that weren't affected by it. But
unfortunately, the Phillies are going to be playing the Yankees. So
they had sidestepped the Yankees because that's who they were supposed to play right after the Marlins. So they got a reprieve before that happened. But that's why I'm saying the East, with the exception of Atlanta, the Braves are on fire, and they got Nick Markakis coming back. And who knows how that'll work, as far as how he'll contribute. That just makes them better. So other than the Braves, the rest of it is a top. I'll say I think the Mets and obviously the Marlins right now, I think the Marlins are going to fall apart. Even though what's his name, Rojas from the Marlins currently is leading like in every category. He's got like a 700 batting average. He's got, but he's only been up like 7 times. And
7 times, right?
I don't know how many he's been up. I could look it up, but so all that's going to fall apart. Now, one thing that we're going to see coming up, Blue Jays will finally get a chance to play at their own home field in Buffalo. But this last week, we saw something pretty incredibly cool, I think.
Yeah, they were the home team at Nationals Park, and the staff, they were really good hosts. They had the Canadian flag, they played the Canadian anthem, and during the 7th inning, they played OK Blue Jays during the 7th inning stretch,
that's their 7th inning stretch song, right? So they had walk up music for the Blue Jays. So it was weird to watch that game because the Nationals, they're grays and they're the away team. So they're up first. And then and I did hear talking about, what is it, OK Blue Jays?
Uh-huh.
Bob Carpenter and FP Santangelo, who are the Nationals TV guys, talked about them playing the song and how much they liked OK Blue Jays.
Yeah, and I looked it up because I had never heard the song. I probably have watching, if I've watched a Blue Jays game, but I never... it's 7th inning stretch, so I'm off, stretching.
Plus they normally go to commercials. Right. You're
and
doing some calisthenics.
That's right.
Jumping jacks.
But we will post it on our website and other social media. That's it. But the beginning of it, it's catchy. It's like, you got a diamond, you got 9 men, you got a hat and a bat, and that's not all. You got the bleachers, got them from spring till fall. You got a dog and a drink and an umpire's call. What do you want? Let's play ball. And then the chorus, which sums up baseball. And then the chorus is, OK, Blue Jays, let's play ball. And it goes on. And it's really catchy and talks about, is that a seagull coming in to watch a game? So it kind of goes all over the place, it's worth
going to listen to. It
is very endearing to the Blue Jays fans.
It's an older song. It's not like a new thing.
No.
I don't remember where I saw that it was that it came out, but it's been around for a while.
There were people that said, I grew up listening to this song, and that was probably maybe in the 80s.
Number one on Canadian radio.
That's right.
Number one with a bullet.
Blue Jays.
It's OK Blue Jays.
So we'll post that. That's fun. And I think it was really cool.
Bumping Rush and Alanis Morissette from the top 3. It's OK Blue Jay.
Yeah. It's cool that the Nationals went to that extent. They could have just said, OK, you're the home team, you wear the white, and everything else would have stayed the same. But they really were good hosts, gracious hosts, and
didn't the Blue Jays even like to tweet thanking them?
They did. They said they tweeted out to the Nationals, thanks for being such a great host. So good for the Nationals. But and we all learned a new song. OK Blue Jays.
We did. Now we got that. I got to put that on my. I'm gonna have to put that on Spotify or start my new playlist. Maybe that's what we should do. We should come up with one of those Spotify playlists, and that'll be on it. Plus, a few other games. Did you see Jackie Robinson hit that ball?
Yeah, or in Angels' case, when they were walking so much, you could play. I would walk 5,000 miles.
Right. I think that's a whole playlist right there. A walking playlist. They're like Fats Domino. Instead of walking to New Orleans, they were. It's crazy. So at this point, the Blue Jays, talking about them, they're in a spot where they could really catch fire. And with the young players that they have, with Bo Bichette, and actually, good that I brought this up, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. helped Max Scherzer realize a dream. Maybe not. But when the Nationals and the Blue Jays were playing, Scherzer pitching for the Nationals struck out Vladdy Jr.
Yes, because I think it's 10 years prior when he was with the Tigers, he struck out Vladdy Guerrero Sr.
So many things happening. They've got a good chance to come up. The Toronto Blue Jays do. Tampa Bay, well, but they're all going to be playing second fiddle to the Yankees, that's for sure. And that'll do it for this week's Sibling Rivalry Baseball podcast.
Remember, you can find us on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at Sibling Rivalry BB.
We're also on Twitter at Sibling Rivalry BB without the A. Email us, show@siblingrivalrybb.com. We'd love to hear what you think, so subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to our podcast.
Join us next week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball as we talk about the impact of Zinnies.
I got to find Josh Fields. The Angels need help. Yeah!